Hello, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be going over the Panasonic ZS80 point and shoot camera. Let's get started. The Panasonic ZS80 is a point-and-shoot camera with a 1/2 inch, 20 megapixel sensor that has a 30 times optical zoom. This camera has a macro range starting at just 3 centimeters and a flip-up touchscreen so you can tell the camera exactly where you want the focus to be and easily get a great selfie. It also has manual modes alongside its intelligent auto mode, can take continuous photos at 10 frames per second and 30 frames per second on its 4K burst mode, has Wi-Fi and 4K video. Today we'll be going over the buttons, doors, and menus to help you learn your way around this camera. So this Panasonic ZS80, at least where I work, is probably one of our best sellers. It's a pretty fantastic little camera with a lot of features. If you just want something that gives you more range than what your phone can get you, because with its 30 times optical zoom, it can really get you a far reach. Overall, I would say that it's a good bang for your buck sort of camera. Me personally, I prefer the larger sensors, but this does get the job done for those that just want to have something to throw in their bag. Going over the front of the camera here, you can see that there are no buttons. There's a nice grip here, which I absolutely love. However, the flash, because it's not a pop-up flash, is right here in front, which can easily be concealed by your finger, so you want to be careful that you keep your grip low if you want to use that flash. On the side of the camera here, you can see that it does illustrate its 30 times zoom. This is going to be your speaker when it's playing back video for you. On this side of the camera, this is going to have a little door here, so if we pop that open, that's going to give you your HDMI port, which will allow you to connect it to a television screen, show off pictures from your trip as a slideshow, whatever you want to do there. It also has a USB port here, which is also available to charge the battery in camera. But this also allows you to transfer pictures to your computer and update the firmware on this camera as well. This cord does come with the camera when it is purchased. The HDMI cable is sold separately. On the bottom of the camera, as you can see, this is where we're going to find our model here, the ZS80. We have our universal screw mount for every tripod, anywhere from a GorillaPod to a larger tripod. And then we have a door here, which is going to house our rechargeable battery and our memory card. And it's very difficult to see here, but up at the top here, it does show the correct way to put the card in, where there's going to be a corner of your SD card missing, so it just shows you the correct way to put that in. Even though it's really tiny, it is there. So there is a correct way to put your SD card into your camera, so do keep that in mind. Don't force it, ever. Going to the top of the camera here, we have, of course, our on and off button here, which is very clearly labeled. The red button here is going to be for recording video. Whatever mode you are on here, which we're going to go over here in a minute, you can record video as long as you're not on like panoramic mode. But all you have to do is hit once to start recording, hit against to stop recording. Very simple to work with. You have your shutter button here, which you press halfway down to hear the beep and all the way down to take the picture. You're going to go ahead and zoom here. So if you move the lever over toward the T, it's going to be telephoto. It's going to zoom out, versus toward the W, which is wide angle. It's going to go back to its widest point. Here on our dial, we're going to start on the IA spot. IA it stands for Intelligent Auto. So what that's going to do is it's going to be automatic, where the camera makes all the decisions for you. You don't really have to do any of the thinking. You just point, beep, and take the picture. What's great about the Intelligent Auto mode is if you have it pointed at a person, it's going to kick into portrait mode. If you're really close to a subject, it's going to kick into macro mode. It's a very smart auto mode. It's not just a general auto mode. So this is a great mode to start on when you're brand new to this camera, you're trying to find your way around it. This is just a general mode to be on to kind of see what it's capable of. The P mode is going to be your program mode. This is going to be your first step off of auto if you want to have a little bit more control with your pictures and this point and shoot camera. So if you wanted to learn more about your manual modes, I do have videos in my playlist of my tips and tricks videos, kind of going over what these mean in detail, but I'll kind of go over them a little bit. The P mode is going to be auto mode, but it's going to give you more control. This is going to allow you to choose where you're focusing, how you're focusing, where it's taking the light from, those type of things, which we'll go over here in a moment when we start going over the back of the camera. The A mode is going to be your aperture mode. This is going to control how much light you let in through the lens. This also controls your depth of field, that nice blurry background and sharp foreground. Although with this camera you are extremely limited, not just because of the sensor size, but because the aperture availability on this is only 3.3 to 6.4. It's not very wide. S mode, of course, is going to be your shutter speed mode. This is going to control capturing motion or showing motion. You can also do long exposures with this to, maybe get the movement of lights on the freeway. You get those light streaks from the car's headlights and brake lights. That's something that you can play with this camera on shutter speed mode. M mode, of course, is going to be your full manual mode, where you just tell the camera what to do. The camera only does what you tell it to. I wouldn't shoot in this mode on a regular basis, especially with this camera. But just so you know, it is there if you know your apertures and your shutter speeds and your ISOs very, very well. You have your movie mode, which of course is going to be primarily for video. Now, like I said earlier, you don't have to be on your movie mode in order to do a video with this red button here to start recording and then stop recording. You can be on literally your auto mode, any of your manual modes, or your movie mode, or even your creative mode, which we'll go over here in a moment, to record video. This is just going to give you more access to specific video settings, also audio levels on this mode where it's more directed toward video. So don't worry if you're taking pictures and you suddenly go, oh, I want to do a video, let me switch over to my movie mode. It's not super important that you do that. C mode is going to be your custom mode. This mode is primarily going to be for circumstances where you're shooting in, say, studio lighting. So say you use this camera to take pictures of your product that you sell on a site like Etsy, and you found the perfect settings, and then you go out and you take pictures of your family or your dog or a butterfly that you saw on a flower or whatever, and you come back and you want to take more pictures of your products. If you save your settings to the C mode, all you have to do is when you're shooting on P mode outdoors and you go, okay, I'm back indoors, I want to take more pictures of my jewelry or art or whatever, you can just dial right back into C mode and it's going to be where you saved it. So unless you're shooting in studio lighting like I do with my YouTube channel on a regular basis, I wouldn't worry too much about the custom mode. The little squishy rectangle is going to be your panoramic mode. This will allow you to start taking pictures from left to right in a smooth motion. Do not move the camera up and down when you're moving it that way. It will not work, but it helps you get those nice wide establishing shots for pretty landscapes. Your scene mode is going to be very similar to your auto mode. What's different about your scene mode in comparison to auto is you can tell the camera, okay, you have full control, but no, I'm taking pictures of a person, or I'm taking pictures of a landscape, or a sunset, or I want the water to glisten, or I want to do like a handheld nightscape, or, your food, freeze animal motion for your pets, sports, and then even black and white. So this just gives you more creative control over auto mode. But again, I wouldn't let this mode run your photography. If you're taking pictures of a person, don't go, oh shoot, I want to switch over to glistening water all of a sudden. Make sure that you have time when you're playing with this, because then you're just going to get frustrated dialing through the menus. Then we have our creative mode, which is a little painter's palette here. What the painter's palette does is it's essentially a filter over your picture. So you have like retro, you have old days, you have sepia, you have different black and white modes, but my personal favorite, if we dial down here, is going to be the 1-point color. So if you're not much of a Photoshop person, because you can do this in Photoshop, but if you don't want to, what this mode will allow you to do is allow you to pick out one specific color, and make the rest of the picture black and white. So very similar to their photo example on the back of the camera, how the flower is pink, but the leaves are black and white. It'll allow you to make your image really pop with color if you want to try to do something like that. It's a lot of fun, you know, it gives you a lot of things to play with on this camera if you like tinkering and trying new things. And for the rest of the walkthrough, I'm going to stay on the P mode, because if we're in auto mode, a lot of our menus and a lot of the features are actually not available to access because we're in auto mode. So in P mode, if you're doing the walkthrough with me with your own camera and I'm going through the menu and you don't see anything, just double check that you're not in auto mode, dial into P mode so you can kind of follow along. And then of course up here, this is actually where your built-in mic is going to be for when you're doing video. So keep that in mind as well. Going to the back of the camera here, you can see that this is going to be our viewfinder. So right now, if this is the little sensor here, if you bring your face up to the camera, your viewfinder is going to turn on, versus if you take your face away, your back screen is going to turn on. This button right here, LVF, stands for Live Viewfinder. So if I hit this button once, it's going to put it just to the viewfinder. If I hit it again, it's specifically to the screen. That sensor is not going to work. If I do it one more time, it's back to automatic. So it really just depends on whether or not you like to use the viewfinder much, if you like to use the screen, or if you like to use a little bit of both. Personally, I like to use a little bit of both, but I am more of a viewfinder shooter, so it really just depends on the situation. Going over our buttons here on the back of the camera, this is going to be our function 1 button. Now notice up here how it says function 4. This one says function 2, function 3. These are all pre-programmed out of the box, but if you wanted to program them, to be something completely different, you could absolutely do that in the menu, which we'll go over last. But as of now, right out of the box, the function 1 button is going to be connected to a post-focus mode. It's letting you know that focus point can be selected after recording a select amount of 4K burst shots. So this is only going to be useful for things that are still not moving, like a flower or a landscape or something like that. Nothing with animals. You'd probably do a person posing if you wanted to, as long as they can be still enough and not move throughout the images. Because what it does is it takes a select few, and then you can pick your focus point after you've taken the picture. So it really just depends on what you're using it for. I find that a lot of people doing macro photography, where it's difficult to find that nice focus point of where they want to focus, post-focus mode can be very, very helpful. Otherwise, just be aware that if your camera randomly starts taking a little series of photos, you're not taking very quick pictures, you may have turned this on accidentally. So you can always check that by hitting this button right here. The play button is going to be for looking back on pictures. Naturally, I don't have a memory card in it at the moment, so there's nothing to look through, but if there was, you could just hit to the right or left to scroll through your pictures, or you could use the little adjustment wheel here. Also, your universal exit button to exit out of any menu or anything like that. You just hit your shutter button halfway down and it gets right back into picture shooting mode. Here we have our shortcuts, so if we hit up on this plus and minus symbol here, this is going to be your exposure compensation. So if we go minus, it's going to make the scene darker. If we go plus, it's going to make it brighter. This is just, to make your scene a little bit brighter or darker without changing any major settings, which is nice. If we hit to the right, this is going to control our flash. So you have automatic, you have red eye, you have, turning it off completely. So it really just depends on what you want to do. If you hit to the left, where you see the little flower with the MF, this is going to be your focus mode. So you have autofocus, which you push the button halfway down to focus. You have autofocus macro, which will allow you to be able to get really close. I believe you can go at most 3 centimeters away from the subject to focus on macro. You have macro zoom, which uses a digital zoom to get even closer to the subject. almost microscopic, where you can get a lot of detail. And then you have full manual focus, which this does have an adjustable ring here. So if you wanted to adjust focus yourself, you could do that by accessing this menu here. And then of course by pushing down, this is going to give you your drive mode. So you can also access your post focus mode here as well. So if you wanted to change this to something different, you can. The single square is going to be a single photo. So if you click and hold this button down, it's going to take one picture. This is going to be the 10 frames per second. So if you click and hold this button down, it'll take 10 pictures in 1 second, capturing motion. The 4K photo burst is going to take pictures at 30 frames per second. So it's very, very fast in a 4K clip, which is kind of cool. You have the post focus mode, and then you have your self timer as well, all attached to this here. If we go down into the function 3 button, not only is this a way to delete pictures when you're on playback mode, but you see here it says Q menu. This is going to mean your quick menu. So if we hit this button, it allows you to change all the settings that you see on the top and all the settings that you see on the bottom. So kind of going over these, this up here is going to be how it translates color. Now this is only available in JPEG. Standard is just going to be its regular standard color of what it sees. You have vivid color, natural color, monochrome, which is black and white. So it really just depends on what you want to play with. Again, we have our flash settings, which you can also get by pushing right. You have your video settings here, depending on the frame rate or quality you want your video. You have your size of JPEG here, or if you have it on RAW, for instance, it's just going to be your ratio size. So like 4:3, stop it. 4:3, 3:2, 16:9. These are all just kind of ratio sizes. So this camera does shoot in RAW if you wish. It has the ability to just shoot RAW and JPEG, or just JPEG, just really up to you and if you have time to Photoshop. You have your autofocus mode, which is how it's autofocusing. Okay, so rather than having your focusing either on autofocus or manual focus, this is how autofocus works. On AFS means autofocus single. This means that it's going to focus and lock onto your subject. So it's going to be for landscapes, flowers, someone that's posing, nothing that's moving. You have autofocus continuous, which is going to be a continual autofocus. So as the subject moves in the frame, like wildlife or sports, it's going to continually look for that motion to focus in. And then you have autofocus flexible, which is going to be essentially autofocus auto, where you're letting the camera determine if it's AFS or AFC. So it really just depends on what you want to do there. We have your focus area, which is going to be where it's autofocusing. Okay, so you have the 49 point area, which that covers the entire area of this camera. The most focus points this camera has is 49 focus points, so you can be very specific. But it's also a front focusing mode, so if it determines something is in front, it's going to focus there first. You have custom multi, which kind of slims down the number or the area for you. You have one area, which allows you to be very specific with where you want to focus, which is what I personally like to use, because I like to be very specific with my focus points. Otherwise, you have tracking, and you also have face and eye detection if you're taking pictures of people. So, depending on what you're taking pictures of, you could change that on a regular basis, and that's what quick menu is for. It's having quick access so you can change your settings from a day-to-day basis. Now then, if you keep going over, it'll go down here where it's going to be your metering. So multi-metering is considering the entire image, and it creates a balance of light because your camera is metering for an 18% gray grade, which means it's just trying to find those middle tones. So once it finds the middle tones, it goes, that's a great picture. And if you have it on center weighted, it's considering whatever's in the center. So notice that if I have, because right now my current camera that's recording this is on center metering, if I move it to something darker, it lightens everything up. But if I move it to my really bright screen here, it really makes everything darker because it's trying to make this this screen a middle tone so you can see it. That's why I like to keep it on center weighted, which is why you see the color shift. I'm working on getting myself a gray mat so it'll be less shifty during videos, so just keep that in mind. And then you have spot metering, which allows you to meter for an area and then maybe put it off to the side. So if you wanted to be more creative and asymmetrical, you could go ahead and use your spot metering tool for that. Down here we have the exposure compensation, so you can also get to that again by pushing up on your dial, which we went over, to make your scene a little bit brighter or darker. We have your ISO, which is your image sensitivity to light. You can put it on auto. I personally wouldn't put this camera any more than like 1000 ISO to avoid any noise in your images. So I mean, if you want to keep it on auto while you're learning the camera, that's perfectly fine. And then you have white balance, which in most cases you can keep it on AWB for auto white balance. The camera is going to do a pretty darn good job figuring that out. Otherwise, you can change it to other temperatures like sunny, cloudy, shady. You see that it changes different hues from different blues and oranges, which can make a picture better. Or you can always do it in editing, just depends on what you want to do, but I would just keep it in auto white balance personally because the camera's really good at determining that. And then of course we have our last button over here, which is going to be our display button. That just controls the display that you're seeing on the screen, so you have a level here to make sure that your picture is straight, less information, completely off. And then we have this one here, which is probably my favorite because you can see your battery level. If I had a card in there, it would tell me how many pictures I have left down here and just some general settings that I have on. It's not too busy, which is nice. All right, so we're gonna finish out the video here going over the menu, okay? So starting up at the top, you know, all of these are gonna be tabs with different sets of menus. The camera here is gonna be your shooting menu. Now, a lot of these settings in the shooting menu are found on your quick menu or somewhere on the outside of your camera that we went over. So I'm going to skip over a few of these that, you know, I'd just be repeating myself, or that maybe are not worth telling you about because it's something that you probably won't ever use, and it's just a big waste of your time. So if you do have a specific question about the menu that I don't go over in detail, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to clarify for you. Other than that, we'll go ahead and get into it. So we went over aspect ratio, the kind of sizing of your images, picture size, quality, the focus mode, your sensitivity, which is your ISO, your white balance, where it's auto focusing, your photo style, how it translates color we went over, filter settings, which is going to be your creative mode up here, your metering mode, where it's taking the light from, eye dynamic, eye resolution. I would personally just keep those off, especially if you're going to do any sort of editing to your pictures. Other than that, you can play with these, see if they make a difference, see if it's something you like. Red eye removal, up to you, it's up to preference. If you're going to use this flash quite a bit with people, you know, turn it on, at least then it'll help you out, save you from that. ISO auto upper limit, I would definitely set a limit when it comes to auto. Like I said, this doesn't have a 1000 limit, so I would set it to 800 to be its limit on this camera. Minimum shutter speed, I just keep that on auto. Diffraction compensation, I wouldn't worry about that. Stabilizer, you want to make sure that you turn the stabilizer off if it's on a tripod. Other than that, you always want to make sure it's on when you're shooting handheld. That way it kind of compensates for your body shake. Eye zoom, I would keep that off. Digital zoom, you always want to keep off. Your burst rate, wouldn't worry about that. The 4K photo, the self timer, again, this is all accessible by pushing down on your dial here. You can do a time lapse or stop motion animation sort of shooting in the menu. You can turn it on silent mode, which makes the camera basically in a covert mode where it's, you know, it's very, very quiet, doesn't make any noise. But if you do turn it on silent mode, it can turn off a lot of features on the camera, so do be aware of that. Your shutter type, where you can use manual shutter or electronic shutter, that's all going to be preference as well. Bracketing and your high dynamic range. I personally would keep the high dynamic range off, but if you don't edit your pictures, again, you know, you can try and see if it's something that you like how the pictures come out. You know, it's worth a try, that's for sure. And then we'll go into the next tab here, which is going to be our video tab. Now, your video tab is actually going to be very, very similar to your shooting tab. So I actually am not going to go over this tab, but again, if you do have a specific question about your video tab, let me know in the comments below, but it's going to be extremely similar to your shooting menu here. We're going to go ahead and go into the wrench with a C. This is going to be your custom settings. I'm going to start with exposure. Now, notice when I start with exposure, it's going to just keep going down into these, so keep that in mind. There's 6 pages on this. You can customize any of these. I'm just going to breeze through these and cover what's important, but you're really not going to change any of these. Don't put it on half press release. It'll take a picture when you push halfway down. It gets frustrating. Let's see, eye sensor, autofocus. I mean, you're really just not going to change most of these. It just gives you the option. Function button set. So if you wanted to change any of your function buttons, this is where you would do it. You can change the direction that you move the dial on the rings. Your touch settings if you want to turn the touch screen off. Your zoom lever. Your auto review. Your auto review in case you want to see the picture pop up after you've taken the shot. Monochrome live view, which will help you compose your image a little bit better when it comes to lighting. You can show off the histogram, the center marker. You can add the guidelines if you want to do that to help with your rule of thirds. So you have manual focus guide, recording area. For me, when that remaining display pops up, I like to see how many pictures I have left, not necessarily video. It depends on what you're mainly using this for. Lens position or zoom, I would keep that off. Let's see, self timer auto, self shot, which just means that when you flip this screen up, it counts down from 3 to 1 when you hit this button. That way, you can smile and it doesn't take a picture right away. Face recognition and profile setup, wouldn't worry about those either. And then of course we have our general setup menu, which goes over like the time and the date and your Wi-Fi connection. So you can connect this camera to your smart device if you want to transfer photos and to share with friends and family or on social media. That way you don't have to wait till you get home and put it in your computer and do all that stuff. So it does have that Wi-Fi connection. You just download the Panasonic Image app and it's fairly easy to get started. You can turn the beep on and off. You can put economy mode on to save the battery. You can change your monitor display or how bright you want the monitor to be, the language, if you need to reset your settings. So if you are playing with this camera, you've changed something, the camera is doing something funny and you can't figure it out, you can always just go to reset to set it back to factory settings, which there's no shame in that. If you're on vacation, no one else can figure out what's going on with your camera. It's just better to reset the camera and start over with that. That way you can continue to take pictures. We have your level gauge adjustment if it seems a little off. Demo mode, naturally you'll keep that off. It's not a demo camera. Wouldn't worry about the approved regulations, but format is something that I definitely want to go over. I go over it with every camera. It's really important to know what formatting is because usually people either never learn what it is or they learn it the hard way. Formatting is going to permanently delete everything on your SD card to brand new. And there are a few different sort of people out there. There are people that will buy a memory card, use it for a vacation, and then put it aside, and that's what it is. It's the storage for their vacation, and that's fine. Then there's people like me that have several memory cards that will just rotate them and reuse them accordingly. Now, formatting allows me to start fresh each time after I make sure that my pictures are backed up. So as long as you know that your pictures are backed up to a source, whether an online source, a physical source, or both, Instead of going and just deleting the pictures with the trash can, you actually want to go in and format. Now, it's okay if you want to delete some of the blurry pictures while on your vacation to make room for better ones. But after you're back from your vacation, you want to reuse your card for another event. Make sure you've backed up your pictures and format. Because if you use the trash can, it's essentially just recycling the data. So you can't see the visual image, but the data is still there in the card. You're just overwriting it over and over and over again. That can cause corruption. It can cause your card to lock up. You can actually lose future images that way. So just, for the sake of your future pictures, make sure every now and then you format your card. So just keep that in mind. You have a My Menu tab here, which allows you to take any settings from these tabs here and combine them in just one simple place if you're not going to change a lot of those, which you're not. And then, of course, you have your playback menu, which will allow you to do a slideshow, protect images from being deleted. You can crop, you can resize, you can rotate, all that sort of thing. There's some light editing you can do in the camera, but overall I would do all that on an external device, whether it be your phone or your computer. But other than that, that pretty much sums up this camera. Pretty excellent little guy for the price that you pay for it. Has a lot of different playful features for it. Nice grip, so you don't feel like you're gonna drop it. If you guys have any questions about this camera, or if you have a camera in mind that you would like me to do a walkthrough of, please leave me a comment below. I'd be happy to add it to my list. Until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye.